this pretty high level. If at any point you have a question about what I'm going over, or if there's something on the slide deck that you have questions about, let me know. Jill knows I can turn this into a 2.5-hour presentation pretty easily. So I'm gonna try and get through it a little bit quicker and maybe hope that when you leave here, you have a little more ideas about what EDR is and why you need EDR, or what MFA is, or two-factor authentication is, and those pieces, and how you can keep businesses a little bit safer, as well as the environment and why it's important to make sure you take cybersecurity measures seriously. So just real short about us, we started in 2018, so we're not that old of a company. We have 30 staff at this point. We support about 250 businesses throughout Minnesota and other states currently. So we had a very fast growth path, but we have a lot of really amazing techs. If you've spoken with them, they can help you. We always want to make sure that you're speaking with someone that can help you as well. So when you call our main number, you always get a tech that can help you right away instead of some sort of answering service or going through an IVR. Why is cybersecurity important? The biggest piece is that you have more users than ever before. One of the latest Cisco reports show where there's 3.6 internet connected devices per individual in the world. If you think about that, that's massive. You have thermostats now, you have fridges, you have washing machines that are all internet connected. Those are all points of attack and points that bad actors can get into if they're not protected correctly. You have increased digital data and an increased amount of data in the cloud, which go kind of hand in hand. Going from 2012, if you've worked in the business, you have bankers boxes upon bankers boxes of accounting data and all other information, charting data and information that you have to keep and maintain. And there's been a push to make that all electronic. So not only is it easier to access and use, but it's easier to share with other people. So with the advent of going from those basements full of paper boxes to them on thumb drives or hard drives, you have more data than ever before in the cloud or digital. You also have a lot of changing working conditions between COVID-19 and other aspects. If you want to work more remotely, now you have a lot more individuals working not in a main office, not within a set of 4 walls. That's easier to protect. So how do you protect those users too? As well as an increase in malicious actors. Those actors have found it even easier with the advent of AI to change what they're using, and I'll go over that in a few slides. So this is a quick slide. It'll show you that the average ransomware payment in Q2 of 2024 was almost $400,000. That's massive. And of the companies that are being hit, small and medium businesses make up the bulk of it. The other interesting piece is that when you think of a ransomware attack, you're thinking of someone getting in, collecting all the data right now, and then locking you out. That's not the way it works. WCT has been involved in several of our clients, or at that point, potential clients calling us and saying, hey, we had the FBI call us, or we're being ransomed. What do we do? So we can help step in and try and stop that. But what most ransomware does is it comes in through, say, a phishing attack, and it'll kind of crawl your system, ask for more elevated privileges, get onto more machines, and it takes time. In fact, I think there's a slide later on that shows it's usually on your network for 6 to 8 months before they lock anything down, which is a very long time. And you can see, going from 2020 to Q3 of 2023, there was a massive growth in ransomware payments by quarter. So the attackers were getting a lot better at what they were doing. Now you see a big decline, and part of that's attributed to the fact that through COVID-19, there was a requirement for more cybersecurity measures from state or the federal government, from cybersecurity insurance companies, and they pushed a lot more security, so people had to take it. The other driving factor of this decrease was the war in Ukraine and Russia. A lot of the bad actors, which we'll talk about here, come from that part of the world. With the war, there was a lot more cyber warfare between the two countries, and they saw an actual decrease in the cyber criminals getting money from other companies, which is really interesting. But that also means that as that ramps down, or I'm expecting to see an increase here in the next few quarters. The last piece of the slide is this monitor. So this is an actual website you can go to that has an 800 number that you can talk with a professional on how to develop your own ransomware software. Not only will they develop it for you, they'll help you figure out how to send it. They'll help you figure out how to receive payment from it. And there's that 800 number you can call for tech support on your ransomware if needed. So I think people have that idea or ideation that hackers are 30-year-old males in their mother's basements in a dark room, right? And that's just not the case anymore, or maybe it wasn't ever the case. But there's legitimate businesses that there's HR departments, there's payroll departments, and they think they're working for a real company, for an honest company, I should say. And that's not the case. In fact, there was one big one that was shut down in the Ukraine 2.5 or so years ago now, and they had 350 staff. Almost a quarter of those staff didn't know what the company did. They knew they provided some sort of tech support. They thought they were working for a legitimate company. It wasn't. So again, things change very quickly, especially when you have that many users in one space. I'm not trying to scare anybody, so don't be too freaked out. I'm trying to keep, yeah, okay. So how do they get in? What happens to, what do the bad actors do to get into your systems, right? One thing we're going to talk about is MFA. We've spoken about it a few times. It's very important. It's maybe one of the single most important pieces of software you can have. That's the dark blue line. You see that almost 85% of attackers back in 2018 got in through remote access. The Colonial Pipeline. What happened in the Colonial Pipeline was they didn't have MFA on the remote access, and the staff person uses the same password for their work account as they did for personal accounts. I'm sure we'll talk about passwords later, but everyone keeps their password on a sticky note on their computers, which is really poor security practices. But as you can see, as MFA has been implemented and has been required more often, that's really gone down. So it's no longer the most attacked vector. Phishing is actually seen as probably the most common occurrence for ransomware to get into your systems. I'm going to go over a few of these. If you have any questions, please let me know. Some of the big ones is that 91% of successful breaches started with a phishing attack. Phishing attack is when someone, and we'll go over it in the next slide, is when someone clicks an email with a link that looks like a good link. It sounds like something they should click on. Maybe it's to check their UPS packages, but it's a malicious software that downloads, installs itself, and now you've got ransomware, and so will your whole network eventually. 6% of malware was 0 day. I'll explain what 0 day is when we get to the EDR and antivirus pieces, but it's something that has never been seen in a while before. And then company size. I think this is really interesting because a lot of people think that it's the largest companies that get hit the most often, right? So from 1,000 to 10,000 people were only made up of 20% of the ransomware company by size. 100 to 1,000 was 31%, but if you look at 11 to 100 was probably the biggest piece of the pie individually at 34%. So it's not just the large corporations that are being targeted. In fact, large corporations are being targeted less because they're mandating those security measures to be put in place. Whereas the smaller companies say, oh, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not a target. They don't care about my data on bowel movements or whatever we're trying to hide or protect. I mean, it's a common thought, right? We work with a lot of healthcare companies, and who cares about that stuff? But you still have social security numbers and a lot of other information that's very pertinent. And then the last piece I'm going to hit on is that every minute there's 63 malware attacks, which means there's a little over 1 a second. So because phishing is a big piece of how ransomware gets into your systems, we're going to go over a real quick slide on phishing. Standard phishing is the most common type. It's when there's mass emails sent out to a big group. Think of it as just a really wide net that somebody throws and they take whatever they catch. All right. Spear phishing is targeted attacks at individuals. If you have a website that shows pictures of your payroll individuals or HR individuals, the bad actors can use those pictures to say, hey, I'm gonna email this payroll person saying I'm Fred, and my account number, my routing number for my bank has changed from this to this. And without people verifying it verbally or calling the person, there's been a lot of individuals or companies that have changed those numbers, and now their staff person doesn't get paid, and the money's gone. Whale phishing is an example of high-profile targets. So you're looking at usually C-level or management individuals that are being targeted. And there's cases where the bad actors will study them for months and months and months. There's a case, this is probably 6-7 years old, but they followed the Fortune 500 C-level individual. I think it was a CFO. And they found that their kids went to a private school. The private school had occasional drills. When they had the drills, they sent out emails with an attachment that showed where people are going to go and what numbers to call. So these attackers knew so much about the C-level person in this whale phishing attack that they waited until the school had a drill. They sent out an email to the CFO. CFO in worry because their kids were in a drill, just making sure they wanted to be safe. Opened it, clicked on the link. Ransomware was then downloaded on that person's computer. Because they're C-level, they had way more access than they needed to, which is going to go to the principle of least privilege that we'll talk about. Way more access. So over the course of 6 months, ransomware crawled this company's system until they were caught and they locked everything down. And then phishing uses voice over IP or voice messages. Voice messages are getting much more problematic now with the advent of AI. There are multiple online programs you can use that if you have clips of someone's voice, you can copy it. In fact, I think Scarlett Johansson has a lawsuit right now from the use of her voice from her, that people are using her voice as assistants in other pieces, which she's not comfortable with, which is understandable. So when you look at phishing emails, some common things to keep a lookout for is the from address. You're going to see here with the from, Amazon spelled wrong. And it's also from a domain that Amazon's not going to send from. Amazon's not going to send from a Hotmail domain or from a Gmail domain. So the first thing to look for is who's the from and what does that email address actually look like. Now, if you have just a name in there, you can click on the name and you can see what the whole email address is, because you can mask that so it only shows the name. The other thing to look for, again, is the email address. Look at who it's sent to. If they're requiring something of you, or if they're saying, hey, I need this payment, and it says to user or hello, and then doesn't actually say your name in there, just be wary that that might be a wide cast phishing type attack. A lot of times the attackers will use language that shows you have to do it very quickly, that they need payment now. In fact, I just have a text from my mom. She sent it to me yesterday. It was from MnDOT, and it says you must pay within 48 hours, or you'll get fines. So she sent me the text I had to let her know it wasn't a real attack, but she didn't know what to look for, so she just funnels it all through me. And then a lot of times you also have fake links, and the fake links are where you can go, either fake links or attachments. But fake links are where you're going to go that are going to download that software. And just be wary that there are fake links. If you don't have software on your computer to stop it, if you click on that link, it'll automatically download whatever that target is giving it. So it's important to have software on your computer to stop that automatic downloads. And then the other piece that used to be a lot more prevalent but isn't as much anymore is grammatical errors. A lot of these, again, are from overseas companies or bad actors. And with the advent of, again, AI, they're able to sound a lot better than they used to. So don't just rely on the bad grammar. Oh. Any questions about phishing? Or any thoughts, comments, concerns? Is that helpful so far? It's very important to know your network. And whether you're a small company or a large company, know where your attack vectors are, where you're going to be attacked, and trying to defend those pieces. I would approach a large living company very different than a greenhouse, because you're going to have different attack vectors, different employees, different information, right? So you don't need. One of the things that we pride ourselves on WCT is not having the same box that we sell everybody, that you have to take all of these pieces, because it might not be necessary. But some of the things to keep in mind are going to be if you have VPN clients. If you have VPN clients, make sure you have MFA on those VPN clients, because that's access from the outside world that is getting through your firewall into your network. A firewall is, think of a firewall as a digital door. Okay, every network has an IP address, a public IP address. Public IP addresses are a lot like host or building numbers. Right? That public IP address resolves to a name. It's like Google.com. It's 8.8.8.8. But public IP addresses resolve into a name that you can type in, and that uses a DNS search to resolve it. But every place that has an external connection, your cell phones, your businesses, your house, that has a public IP address that can be accessed from the internet. So for business, this firewall is much akin to your front door in your building. Most people won't leave the front door open. Do you leave the front door open when you leave the chamber or unlocked? No? Most people don't. No, so that raises the question that if we're having more digital data than ever, more infrastructure, more things to protect internally than ever, why are you leaving your data open without having a firewall? The firewall is that lock on the door. It can control who can access it. You have geolocation blocks on there so that you can't access it from other countries. There's a lot you can do to control the data coming in and out of your network with a firewall. And then it's also important to look at these other pieces, such as MFA, EDR, spam filtering, backups. Yes, I'm glad you asked. We're going to skip over backups, and we're going to go to ways to protect end users. So in here, we're going to go over each of these topics. The first, I'm going to hit end user training first, real briefly. End user training is to help inform individuals what to click on and what not to click on. Like you stated, you send emails from your company with phishing campaigns. If you click on them, a lot of times you'll get enrolled in training that you have to go through to get smarter, get better at it. When we implemented it, our staff really disliked it. We have an older gentleman who's been in tech sales for 44-ish years. He complained every day to me, saying he wants to opt out. And I said, he's not opting out. Well, over the course of about a year and a half, he got very smart, and he was able to catch pretty much every phishing attack that came across. So it does work. Um, well, as you can see here, 33% of untrained team members will fail a phishing attack. Once you start putting those training pieces in place, that drops down to 5.4% of people that will actually click on a link once they've been ongoingly trained. So one thing that you can do for a business is make sure you have some sort of end user training, phishing training. If you're a smaller shop or individual, you can always YouTube, how to find phishing attacks, what to look for. MFA. So MFA is multi-factor authentication. This is this one and the same as two-factor authentication. They go hand in hand. What you're doing with MFA is removing the single point of failure in a password. So if you don't have MFA, people normally have a password. Like we kind of discussed, those passwords are then taped onto computers, written down, put on desks. Very poor security practices, because anyone that sits down can now see those passwords. MFA makes it so you don't just have the passwords that can fail. Backing up. With passwords, there's also a very bad habit of individuals to use their work passwords for personal or shopping sites. I'm guessing everyone's done it at least once in here. So if you're, and it's not as often that your corporate accounts gets compromised, what happens is you'll have that big breach that happened at Target with a username and password. If you use the same email address and same password, now they have there's a red carpet right to your work account. So it's very important that you use different passwords for different accounts. Personally, I find it too difficult to use different passwords for all my accounts. So I have a throwaway password that are on accounts I don't care about, say Netflix, things that I can recover if I need to that aren't going to be, no one's going to get information that I don't care about. For all my bank accounts, I have separate, unique passwords for those. And same thing with work. That's a really good question. There's a few that I don't put anywhere because I don't trust. Softwares can be breached, right? We're in business because technology, while it helps us a lot, there are points of failure. So I keep some of my banking passwords and my passwords to my MFA account or my password account. I keep it in my head. There's other passwords I use a password keeper for. I have both a personal password piece. It's called RoboForm. LastPass does the same thing. LastPass is in a great place right now. They were breached last year, but there's a lot of different password keepers. I would suggest if you have a lot of different passwords if you Google password keeper, you can come up with a list of them. If you want more advice or free advice or what you should use, Jill has cards, or feel free to call us and we can just maybe point you in the right direction as far as individual accounts. Yep. Yep. If they get your Apple data, they are still vulnerable. It goes to the point of the MFA. I know someone's question is here is what do I use for MFA? What MFA can I use to protect all my accounts? Because there are some accounts you have access or MFA on, some you don't. Cisco Duo, if you don't have any MFA right now or don't want to use Apple, Cisco Duo is a free version for individuals that you can download you can put your MFA tokens in. For passwords, you can put them into your Apple account, into your Google account. Just be aware that best practices is that you don't use your personal accounts to store work passwords. Especially if you're a business owner, or manager, I would very much suggest to dissuade your employees from doing that because until they leave, you don't have any access over those passwords. So internally, we have a password program that while they're employed, they can use our password program called RoboForm for anything they want. When they leave, we can export their personal information for them if they want it, but then we have control over all of our business passwords. So there's a lot of different. That's why I keep some in my head. Well, mine's falling out, so at some point I'm going to get to the point where I need it written down somewhere. I don't disagree. Be careful with what you use. Be careful with where you put them. If you put it on a personal device, I would highly suggest not using a browser extension passwords like Google Chrome. So easy to use. I have a horrible habit of using it for some of my passwords. It's probably one of the least secure pieces to try. So be careful. Use a legitimate password program. There are some out there that don't charge anything or some that have very, very low rate fees, a couple bucks maybe.
So I understand like not having your password or something like that, but I mean at home, I don't assume any of my family members are going to hack my information. So if you can't keep it in your head, it stands to reason that home might not be a horrible place to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Because is a hacker going to break into your house? I mean, that all feels
Yep.
extreme.
A little too much, and I don't agree with that. And I'm not going to tell people where to keep their passwords or where to write them down at. I would put as much weight, if not a little bit more weight, on my password than I do with my social security number. So if you look at it in that context, that don't leave your password anywhere you're not going to leave your social security number, all going to be safe. Because you have a very valid point. I mean, I'm sure you still have vendors that come in, or people come in, or things get leaked in a bad way, or you have a camera that you have on and it sees something, right? So there's always possibilities. But if you treat your password like you do your social security number, you'll probably be pretty safe. I'm getting there, I think. I hope. Otherwise, she's right again and I'm wrong. But it happens a lot. And she put the slide deck together, so she probably knows. So 94% of ransomware victims investigated did not use MFA. So MFA alone is probably the single biggest piece you can do to protect yourself and your pertinent, important accounts. I'm going to eat my words, aren't I, Jill? All right. Input detection and response. I'll try and go quick on the slide. I'm sure everyone's heard of antivirus, right? Antivirus uses a signature. It's like a thumbprint for each software. Each software has a unique thumbprint that identifies what it is. When that thumbprint is seen as a malicious software, antiviruses will then block it. But what happens is you get thumbprints that are changed, especially with how fast AI can change data and change scripting. You'll have a different thumbprint for almost the same program, that now antiviruses don't know it's a bad program. They don't have that bad thumbprint on file, and that's called a zero-day attack. Microsoft just released an infographic last week or the week before that they just patched 11 zero-day attacks. Now, why this is scary is because Microsoft will patch them as soon as they can, but there is a period of time between when they discover them and when they're able to actually patch them. And they're not telling the general public so that you're aware of the issue, because now they're telling the hackers, hey, we have an exploit to use. So you don't know, and some of these are months long in the process. So antivirus is not the best solution anymore. That's the best reason not to use antivirus is that it just goes off signatures, it doesn't look at anything else. EDR, EDR stands for endpoint detection and response. It's the next level of security for your computers and servers. Endpoint detection and response still looks at the signatures of those files, but it also it uses AI to identify other pieces such as suspicious activity. We talked about a phishing attack and somebody clicking on a bad link. Now that ransomware is installed on that computer, it will ask for more permissions or better or higher level access to other places, and EDR will watch for that and watch for what it's accessing. And if it sees that, it'll actually take that computer and lock it out of your network. So it keeps you safer from those incidents, those happening. We have quite a few. We had one happen this last weekend where we had a notification because we get alerts when our clients get hit with something like this. We got an alert that one of our clients had a machine that was quarantined that had bad software on it. We were able to go in, remediate it, fix that computer, and it didn't touch any of the rest of their devices. As opposed to, we've worked with a casino, and we just had a manufacturer late last year that was co-managed, so they had their own IT. They worked a little bit with us, but didn't take all our recommendations. They were called by the FBI on a Wednesday night saying, hey, we see a connection from this known bad actor, which the FBI is tracking a lot of this stuff, so they know it, but they're not going to call you until it's almost too late. We have this known connection from a bad actor. They're accessing your systems. They didn't do anything about it. The next day, FBI calls them again. Said, hey, they're transferring data. You're going to be attacked. They called us. They didn't tell us what's happening, just to block a certain IP address. Well, attackers switched IP addresses. They were locked out later that Friday night. They finally called us, I think either late Friday night or Saturday morning. We had an individual out there. When the individual got there, they were deleting the last stored backup. If they would have lost that backup, they would have lost 80-some years of business data. And the owners said we would have been done. We would have gone. They would not have been able to recover without that data. Which leads to a point of know what your response is going to be, know who you're going to call, know what steps you're going to take. Are there any questions on EDR, what EDR does, or why it's better than antivirus? And hit real briefly on this. This is a really big thing in the healthcare world because you are required to maintain data. Make sure that you're maintain data for that period that's required, but not longer. There's been cases where there's one case study from New York where there was a prosthetics company that had been in business for 35 years. They had all their client data from the last 35 years. In fact, not only did they have it, they were digitizing the stuff that was 20 plus years old. So they had it all in their systems. They worked with a very large healthcare facility in New York, and they had some of their data from referrals and from other pieces. They got ransomware. All that data was stolen, and now they basically shut down because they couldn't afford the loss that came about it. So make sure you're retaining your data, you have backups of your data, but keep in mind that there is such a thing as having too much data if it's not actually required. The other big piece of this, yeah, the other big piece of this is a principal of least privilege. When I talked about that CEO or CFO that was whale fished, he had access to way more than he needed. You know, it's not uncommon for individuals in management capacities to say, I need access to everything. They don't need access to everything. They need access to what they're doing on a daily basis. They can have a second account or ask for elevated privileges when they need it. But if they have access to too much information, if they get ransomed or if their computer gets ransomed, now you're out that much more information. Incident response plan, I hit on this briefly as well. Even if you don't think it's going to happen to you, come up with a quick plan. It's like a fire escape plan. What are you going to do if it happens? Write it down. Because if this happens to you, you're probably not going to be in the right mind. You're probably going to be a little bit upset, concerned, and frustrated. Have a written plan of, hey, I'm doing this, and this, or I'm calling this person, or there's government resources you can call, a tech company, but have somebody that you can call and say, hey, this is happening. What do I do? That way you're not trying to go through it alone. On top of the manufacturer I was talking about, we also have a casino that we support in the local area. Same thing, they were co-managed. Thankfully, we did their backups for them. They were hit with ransomware 4 or 5 years ago. So we use those as employee tests. If anyone else hasn't done this, you get you get a whole day. But if anybody has an issue, you push down on a clip and opens the pen. The worst part is if you look at the side, it actually says push clip. But we bring these to golf events, and we have people that are looking at them. They'll talk to us and look at them some more. Also, they'll just kind of put it back down and walk away. Just point on the slide, know who you're going to contact, have written steps, have an emergency plan. This is what I'm going to do. Here's the number I'm going to call. Here's who I'm going to ask for help. If you're going to call a company like a business like us, it's really helpful if we have information about you before it actually happens. The casino I was telling you about, they had an individual that worked in Texas. He drove up. They tried to fix it. They couldn't fix it. Thankfully, we set the backups up for them. We had air-gapped or immutable backups, which means we had backups offsite that you can't change once the backups happen. We were able to, once they called us, able to get their casino floor online within 3 hours. They've been down for 3 days. Online in 3 hours, and the rest of the event center and hotel up in 8 or 9.
So I know this isn't your wheelhouse, but since you deal with a lot of this, so when you said like this company got a call, so we hear stuff all the time. The Social Security Administration isn't going to call you. The DMV isn't going to call you. Why would you're hyper cynical of every phone call you get. So what, the FBI is going to call me? How do you know if it's legit?
I have a great story to go to that before I answer, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yes? All right. You're not sick of my stories. We work with another, they deal with walk-ins and people coming in for healthcare-related issues, right? They were called by the FBI 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. The guy did the same thing that you're talking about, which is perfect. He goes, you're not the FBI. He hung up on him. They tried calling back. He hung up. And he's like, well, shoot. So he actually, you can Google the FBI field office. And he Googled the number to the FBI field office, called the field office and said, hey, I just got a call from this number. Is this you? And they go, yeah, that's us. And then they got to the person. So I would verify. Same thing as changing a bank account information on somebody's pay stub. Don't talk to somebody on the phone about it if you don't know their voice. Don't go off an email. Hang up, call a known number, and verify. or call somebody to help support you and help you do that. But call and verify. And on that call, another very, very important point, especially with ransomware, is when he was talking to the FBI, he goes, well, I work with a tech company. I'm going to email them. The FBI goes, don't email them. They're in your Exchange server, your email server. They have access to your emails. If you email them, they're probably going to see it and they're going to lock you down right now. So they go use your personal cell phone, text the company or call the company. He did. We were able to get one of our guys on it, able to lock out the ransomware company before they actually locked anything down. They were fine. But to your point, he was careful, but I think careful in a really good way. So just be mindful to verify who you're talking to. Great question, though.
You mentioned like don't call us before you want to know about the company. Do you offer just like a basic
So
like said, hey, I would want to get my information so you have some awareness of us and plan?
so my sales engineer is going to hate me for this, but we provide free discoveries. So we'll come in, run a free discovery on your network, which will give us a lot of information about your network. If you're willing at that point to sign our service agreement and give us access to your passwords and your information, we'll then store that in our secure databases so that it's stored secure. If something happens, we have that information. And the best part is you're not charged a penny for those discoveries. So just a thought.
Or business could just buy a little bit of time to just say, hey, I have a free plan and have you have
Yep.
backed up and access and maybe never need you for
Yep.
10 years. And then
We've been told by industry standards our service model for that is really off. Most companies charge between $1,000 and $2,000 to come in and do that assessment. We don't. We feel it's a good way to, if nothing else, show you your holes, because we'll come back to you saying you need X, Y, Z. Here's what we recommend you upgrade. Here's what we recommend you do. And if you work with us, we'd love it. If you don't, you don't. We do. We're different. We're also different from the industry standard that we. And this is. I'm not trying to be a sales pitch here, but we don't have any long-term agreements. So we don't have 1, 3, or 5 year agreements that you have to sign to work with us. We have a service agreement that has an active God clause that our attorney makes us sign. I have somebody sign, but it's a one-page document. Once you sign that, we can work. Our techs can work with you. You can call in. You can take as much support or as little support as needed. You can take 2 or 3 hours. You can call in and say, hey, I have a discovery. I have questions about this, or I have a compliance individual coming in. They say we need an assessment. We can then help you with that assessment, and that will be a charged piece then. But we can help you with as much or as little as you want. Our goal is that we leave the community in a better place, and we support businesses in our local communities. Yep. Patching. Patching is very important. Security patches are pushed out. I know people absolutely hate when their computers are restarted because they have 30,000 tabs open and they lose all their work. You need to do it. It's required. Bookmark it. Save the pages you need. But you need to patch when they're available. Patches help cover up those holes that the bad actors are going to exploit. So especially with security patches, please don't put those off. But you need a patch. If you want to wait a week or 2 for a patch, that's fine. Something that we do with the companies we support is that we have a software we put on that does the patching for the clients we support. And we'll actually take and wait a week or 2, depending on the patches that aren't security patches, to implement them. Because some of those patches do break things. There's a patch 2 summers ago that when you patched, you couldn't use Brother, Kyocera, Konica, and HP, I think, printers, because it broke printers. So we verify those patches before we install them on our client base. So if you want to wait a couple weeks, that's fine, but don't put it off for months. And please restart. Please, please, please. Your phone, your computer, your phone can be at once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks. But not from a cybersecurity perspective, but from just a device perspective. When you have applications on your computer, even if you click X out and X out of them, a lot of those programs are still running in the background. They're still taking up RAM memory, and they're going to make your computer slower. So restarting should help your devices be a little bit faster as well. Going off that, technology is ever changing. Nokias were super popular way back in the day. Indestructible, hard to get rid of, right? How many of you still have one though? No. I have mine. I actually have my Nokia and my BlackBerry. But stay informed. There's good resources like bleepingcomputer.com. There's good resources you can see for news, for what's happening. Don't be afraid of looking for it or looking for what's going on. Be informed is how you're going to be best protected. Try and adopt whatever best practices make sense, especially for your business or your company. And then I think a really good mindset, especially for businesses, is that cybersecurity is every user's responsibility. We talked about the phishing attacks and the employee training. Employees are the weakest point of a network typically. All right, AI. Real brief, unless there's questions. So I'm running a lot of questions about AI. What is AI? Or I don't want to touch AI. It scares the crap out of me. Wherever your stance is, just like I had up here that you need to stay informed, I think you're going to be better off trying to figure out what AI is or look into it than to ignore it and assume it's going to go away. It's not going away at this point. AI has actually been around since the 70s. Then IBM had their Watson program that was involved in AI. Search engines are actually based off of AI. So it's been around for forever. It's just at the point now where it's very public and it's being used in more ways than ever before, both for good and for bad. I would highly recommend that if you've never used AI, go to openai.org, I believe. It's ChatGPT. It's the largest large language model. You can create a free account and just use it. Okay, just use it carefully, safely. Let me redefine that. So you can create an account, and same thing as your passwords. Ask it questions. See what it can find that you don't know, or if you have an issue, if you have a problem, ask it that problem. You're going to be surprised at how much information it has. Now, as you start paying for them, or you start going through the different large language models, different AI forms, you're going to get more information or more pertinent information. I'll be able to draw you documents, or Notebook LM is a Google. If you have a Google account, Notebook LM is included in your Google account. You can actually have it grab different websites and pieces of information, and it'll create a podcast between two people for you. That sounds very realistic. With AI, I would take the same approach as passwords, if not a little more stringent, is don't put anything into AI that you wouldn't tell a stranger. If you can apply that to your use of AI, you should be safe. I wouldn't put any business data in there that you're not willing to tell a stranger. But if you apply those principles and those concepts, you should be safe to at least use the AI. And AI me personally, it saves me probably 2 to 3 hours a day. In finding emails and composing emails and rewriting things and finding Excel or formulas. So it's very, very powerful in what it can do. The point here is don't turn a blind eye to it. You're going to be better off if you try and leverage it to some extent than not use it at all. A really neat feature about ChatGPT or OpenAI or any large language model is when you put a new prompt in, you can create a new prompt and it'll make a list of your historical prompts. Not only can you use that to find the same data again, you can actually take that prompt and that one session, and you can create a personality out of it. So you can put a prompt into AI stating, please answer me in Old English only, or like a pirate. Or you can say, please challenge everything I tell you. So instead of just giving you information, it'll then go back and it'll try and think about your information. So you can actually create different personalities with different search or different threads, basically. I know that's super broad, but this is another 2-hour discussion on itself. Are there any thoughts or questions? Amazing question. So AI is based on LLMs, large language models. So they're constantly collecting data. Be aware that when you put data in AI, I wouldn't expect that data to be private. I would expect that data to be public at some point. But they don't automatically incorporate in the current version. It used to be years, every 3 to 6 months, there's a new version. The latest version of ChatGPT is, I think, is 4.0. So you're using data up until, I think, 2023 at that point. There's a 3.0, 3.5 before that, you're using data up to 2000. So if you're not asking pop questions or pieces that have happened in history recently, it's going to give you pretty good information typically with older large language models. It might not be as fast or give as relevant information, but it'll still give you pretty good answers on basic questions. But when you start paying for AIs, when you start getting the new language models, you're going to have more historical or more recent historical data in there, and it's going to improve the response of the AI. I would define experience. I've dabbled. They all kind of be more recent or faster or something about them, because the big ones right now are Claude, are ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Copilot, and Gemini, the Android-based one. There is we could Google 3-4 dozen more, and they're all used for different pieces. There's some that are used just for marketing, just for image-based, just for video-based, and so on and so forth. I just realized I'm out of time. So legal, not moral, legal.
Yeah, legal.
Okay. But it's a very big discussion. These are things that they're constantly talking about, both from an academia perspective, or academic perspective, and from a moral perspective, and from legal perspective. The best answer is don't take the work as your own and cite it. So what I would do is if I'm using AI, if I'm putting in, so I'm really horrible at starting papers. Like if I'm writing something or emails, I'm bad at that. So I'll go to AI. I will write an email based on these things, these pieces saying this. And it'll give me an email. Now I'm really good at revising that email to say exactly what I want to say in the format I want it to be. But then I've made the changes. So it depends on how much public data you're using that. If you're having AI go to different websites and use their data or putting data from other places, make sure you're citing the information that you're using. And then I would even put in there, developed or made using ChatGPT Model 4.0 on this date. That way you have a kind of a here's what I did and here's how I used it. Does that answer? Here's the questions that were submitted beforehand. I think I covered some of these. I'm going to go over a few of these other ones pretty quickly. If you have more questions, there's a Q&A right after this, and I will stay for as long as people are here. Son of a gun. You hid that on me, didn't you? We hit it. All right. So this slide, this was a long slide. Yeah, she's always right. Usually. No, she gets no. Passwords. Don't use names of people you know, your name, your birthday, anything else. The most secure way you can come up with a password that I found that I remember the passwords because I have the same thing is a string of letters and numbers. Don't mean anything to me. I look at where I'm at or what I'm looking at, or if there's something that's on my desk. I've had like one of my passwords revolved around Logitech, right? So I use the word Logitech. It's sitting at my desk. I look at it, I can see it, and then I'll replace either letters for numbers, like the O for a 0, or I'll put different numbers in the password or around the password, different capitalization points and at that point you're not remembering the whole word, or maybe the sky is sunny. So now you have a phrase, or rain is wet. Doesn't matter what it is. There's something that sticks with you and sticks in your mind, so you can remember that phrase. And then it's just a matter of remembering what are the capital letters, what are the numbers. What's that? Well, that's where if I come up with a password, I'll make sure that it only has one I. And I know that my I's are 7s or 1s or exclamation points or something similar. That look similar, but it's enough of a trigger for me to at some point figure it out. Square. Square is PCI compliant. Square does not require any vendor or merchant to be PCI compliant, so it's a really good vendor in that it keeps all the information in its database. And as far as a payment system to use, I would not be concerned about Square security. It's such a big company that if they do have breaches or something happen to Square, they're going to have significant pushback. It's going to be such a big negative piece for the company that they put a lot of work and effort into making sure they are secure. So I wouldn't be concerned about Square security as long as you're using good passwords and MFA on it. That's where your security is going to matter. Sensitive information from working remotely using personal devices for work. Ideally, no personal devices for work. If they are personal devices, see if you can't get EDR or some sort of protection on that device, or try and work on devices that are at your employer's office using a VPN to get to those devices. Best practice to protect data near inside the 4 walls. I had that firewall display up there. Honestly, if you're worried about the data inside those 4 walls and it's all based on premise, a firewall and MFA are your 2 biggest pieces to start with. The firewall is like that lock on your front door. So all your data is not open to the public. MFA will help make sure that on any programs that you access, like HR programs or the like, there's going to make sure that not anybody can just log into it. EDR is also very important at that too, as well as backing up. I skipped the backup slides, but backups are very important as well. Multi-factor authentication. Kind of went over this. Does anybody have any questions about MFA or two-factor authentication? Yep. Mhm. Yep. There's a few different ways to achieve that. One of which is using a shared number service. You can have a shared number that it gets sent to, and that number, it's like a shared mailbox that both people get that number. Another way is to use an app like Cisco Duo or WatchGuard AuthPoint, and then have that app have both people being able to log into that app. Because then what you can do, most places that have MFA, you can instead of using a text code, you can use a QR code, and those apps have the ability to scan QR codes and then give you that data. So then you can have two people with the same app and same login information that can access those. In fact, we have a password program called IT Glue that we have a lot of MFA devices, and we always use those QR codes because then those QR codes give you 6-digit verification pieces. So we have any of our texts can then get into the MFA because it's stored in our password software system. And then credit card apps, if that was your question, please let me know after the fact and we can kind of go over what to look for. Right. Are there any questions?